Welcome to Food, Wine, and Whiskey, a podcast about having fun conversations on tasty dishes, vinos, and spirits from around the world. Rob is your host. He is an avid home chef, WSET Level 2 award in wine, and a whiskey drinker and collector. Time to set the table. Here's Rob.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. Glad to have you here. If it's your first time finding our show, thank you for checking us out. If you're returning, you've listened to episodes in the past, we really appreciate that and coming back and listening to another one. If you haven't subscribed, boy, that helps the show a bunch. If you would do that and subscribe to the podcast, that helps. And leaving a review wherever you listen, whether it's Spotify, Google, Apple, any of these places, leaving a review for us, hopefully 5-star, is great for us. It moves us up in the algorithm and allows other people to find us and to listen to the show as well. So thank you very much for listening, and let's dive into today's episode. You know, something that's near and dear to me, the Mexican cuisine. And people are listening going, wait, this guy sounds like a white guy. What's going on here? My wife is Hispanic. She's Mexican. And we've been together about 32 years. And so I've been in the culture a little bit. And it's absolutely become, teaser. There's an episode coming of the top 5 cuisines of the world for some friends and us. And it might be in my top 5. We'll have to see. But it's a favorite of mine. And I have some friends who are from Mexico. Maya, how are you today?
Good, sir. Thank you for having me.
Glad. This is your first time on the podcast.
It is. So it's kind of a little nerve-wracking, but
Are you nervous at all?
A little bit.
Are you really?
Yeah, but tequila is helping.
3 more shots and you're going to be fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Get the bottle.
I got you.
And Brittany and Luis, who have been on the show a few times, are back. Luis is from Mexico. Brittany, like me, is married into the Mexican culture, so we have a little bit of knowledge in this culture.
Been adopted into the family.
Yeah,
for sure.
Brittany more than me because, unlike my spouse, you take her to Mexico quite often.
Come on, son.
Just a little shade.
So today, it's like I said in the beginning, it's one of my favorite cuisines, the Mexican cuisine. But I think there's this, I don't want to call it a misunderstanding. There's maybe not a complete understanding of the cuisine, kind of where it comes from, why we have what we have from the Mexican cuisine. And I'm talking specifically about Americans, what we enjoy from Mexico, what we've taken from their menu and kind of adopted it and started eating it on the regular, in our culture. But I also think, being around friends like you all and being married to an Hispanic lady, there's a lot of dishes that I think Americans don't know about that they probably should. And so I want to talk about some of those too, and they're not like these, I always talk about most cuisines from around the world. The dishes that are so popular, so tasty, so famous are usually the poor man's food. It was made with ingredients, simple things that you put together that could create this just wonderful meal. Right. And I think the Mexican cuisine is very similar in that way. So a lot of the dishes that we might talk about, people might be going, yeah, but how am I going to make some of these dishes that you're talking about? They're really not that hard. They're going to be pretty easy once we get into them.
I mean, like most cuisines in the world, like you were saying, it's poor man's food, and it's not difficult. It's just a little bit maybe more labor intensive than most Americans are used to. I wouldn't say any of our food is really hard to make. It's just a labor of love. It just takes a little bit of time. But generally, the way when we cook, we all cook together as a family. So it doesn't necessarily feel like work. It feels like...
It's like a ceremony.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this. Let's talk about, Maya, where are you from? A little bit about, your experience in food, because you have a food background.
Yes.
And just a little bit about what you think about your cuisine, what you love about the Mexican cuisine.
Oh, that's not fair, because of course, it's my favorite and number one. But, well, I'm from Mexico City, and I was born and raised there. I've been here for 20 years. And as you mentioned, Rob, I'm happy to see that now Mexican cuisine has been, appreciated and you learn about more. Because, as I say, it has a lot of depth and great things. And I'm a chef, but actually my real teaching came from my grandparents and my mom and dad. I mean, they love it. And as Luis was mentioning, every meal in our house, it was, come together and let's prepare it and get it done. So, and as you were mentioning, I think the ingredients are not as complicated and basic. So as I was saying, I think the ingredients are pretty common and known, and it's how you mix them, how you put them together, and there's different occasions. So, I feel it's like even a very healthy cuisine, and it's great. I mean, I think I'm very biased, but I think it's one of the best ones.
You bring up something you just said that I want to get into as we talk about this. Don't let me forget, which is the healthy part. I think a lot of people think Mexican food, and it's prior to starting the episode, Brittany had talked about we'll talk about in a minute where she applied this, but the gobs of cheese that can be on a Mexican type of cuisine in America. But Mexico can be very healthy. I mean, they're big into fruits and vegetables and things like that. So it's something we definitely need to talk about. I think it's a great point.
I think that's a big part of the base of the cuisine. And I think now, as you said, the fusions and the evolution is where the not so healthy part comes in.
And did you say where you're from?
Yeah, Mexico City.
Mexico City. Okay, and that's a diverse city.
It is huge.
So we'll get into kind of over the years how maybe different immigrants have come there, because people may not realize Mexico is a land of some immigrants as well that have had some influences.
Quite a bunch of different cultures that influence our cuisine for sure.
And Luis, before we start, you get to tell us about what we have in the glass before you tell us where you're from in Mexico and what you love about your cuisine.
It's funny you say that, because this wine that we're sipping on is from where I'm from. So this
is a fancy wine. What makes it fancy?
It's a traditional method.
It's got bubbles.
Yes. So traditional method wine, meaning it's re-fermented in the bottle. Traditional cava fruits. So you have your macabeo, jarelo, and uni blanc, which is most people don't know this, but it's like the most widely grown grape in France. But they don't really use it in a lot of wine. They use it mostly for brandy production. But a pretty traditional blend for what a cava would be, which is a Spanish wine. But they're using it here in Querétaro to make a beautiful Mexican sparkling wine. Which again brings us to where I'm from. I was born in Querétaro, which is the capital of state in Querétaro. So we're almost next door neighbors.
We're neighbors.
Really, really close to each other. I'm just a little bit northwest from Mexico City, which is where my entire family's from. So most of my uncles, my grandparents and everything, they're still in DF, which is now Ciudad de Mexico, which kind of takes a little bit to get used to. I've been calling it DF my whole life, and now it's CDMX, Ciudad de Mexico. But yeah, beautiful wine. I think it spends like 24 months on the lees.
Which you can tell. I like that.
Yeah, but it also has this like funky character that we were talking about before, and some really kind of nice acidity to kind of round it all out.
Yeah, I like that funkiness on the nose because, it's just not typical. It's always fun to try something different and new, and that was unique. It's not off-putting. It's actually something that I enjoyed on the nose, but it's not there on the palate, which is also kind of cool. It's very nice on the palate.
Yeah, it's drinking really well. I feel like this would be killer with like a cheese plate or something.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start by talking about, when we think about countries around the world and the foods of those countries, it's very regional. You have different parts of each country. If you think about Italy up in the north, it's going to be more of your meats and risottos and polentas, and then, pizzas and things in certain parts of Naples and things. And you got the pastas of Rome and all of those. How is Mexico? Is it similar in that way?
The most definitely. And even there's like kind of 3-4 major regions in Mexico. And I would say like even every state and city even have like different cuisines. But I think we can talk about maybe some of the biggest regions. We have like a northern region, which is mainly meats and cheeses.
So that's where most of the ranches are. So in the north, they grow a lot of the cattle in Mexico. It's a little bit more arid, so there's not as much an opportunity to grow fruits and vegetables there. So they really kind of specialize in meat. So I lived in Monterrey a little bit, which is more on the northern part of Mexico, and beef there is a huge part of their culture. Carne asada, which here in the United States we normally consider kind of fajita. Slightly different cuts though, but yeah. So the northern region is going to have a lot of the meat, like she said.
The meat and cheeses, definitely. When you go on to the Pacific, that's when you, like the northern Pacific, that's of course more of the fruits and vegetables, same weather and climate and all of that.
So that's what drives, obviously.
Yeah.
Like most countries, what climate, weather, what can we grow here, and then what can we make with those ingredients?
No, most definitely. And then, the Bajío region, it's where you get your rice, your pork, your sausages, more seeds and grains and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's, and it goes like she was saying, you have the Pacific, which makes it a little bit cooler. It makes it a little, so you have the Oaxaca there, which I think is one of the most unique kind of regions and parts of Mexico. It's one of the places that has held on to kind of our pre-Hispanic roots the most. And I think it has an incredibly diverse set of ingredients as well as processes and cooking methods that they still use. And then on the flip side, you have the more Atlantic side. You have the Gulf Coast, which is going to give you kind of its own unique region. And then most of Mexico was dominated pre-Hispanically by the Aztecs. So in the center of Mexico, where Mexico City is now, they used to be Tenochtitlan, which was like the capital of kind of like the Aztec world. And then you start moving more towards the south, towards the peninsula, and you get a lot more Mayan influence. And that's why the food of the Yucatan is going to be a lot different than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else? Is there something else?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, as he was saying, on the south, you're gonna see a lot of the different peppers and chiles also evolving and coming from there. And I think what you said, that pre-Hispanic is definitely the base, the corn, where everything started. And then once Spain conquered us, they brought a lot of also ingredients that we incorporate in the work we see now.
So you haven't said something that I think about to some degree in Mexican cuisine, which is the seafood. Where does that come from? I think Baja, but is that in one of the regions you've already mentioned, or? Because I think about the tacos, right? The fish tacos are very, very popular. And I think, is that where fish tacos originated? Is it from Mexico?
I think so, and especially the ones we kind of know today. But that's going to be like more northern Mexico, like Baja California. Okay. Back in those days, there was a lot of kind of back and forth between American culture and Mexican culture, just because we're so tied together economically, distance-wise, very close together. But it's the same thing all across the border. So like a lot of like we were talking about earlier, El Paso and Juarez. You have Tijuana, more on the West Coast. Here we have Brownsville and everything. So like the culture kind of going back and forth, I feel like really dictated, especially in the West Coast, the fish tacos. But seafood is so prevalent. Like Mexico's surrounded by oceans.
That's what I was getting at. I was wondering if that's a big, food in Mexico. I'm assuming it is, but I just didn't hear you.
Yes, no, seafood is so prevalent, and we eat so much more than the average American would think. Like we were talking earlier, before the podcast, but Mexico is not only regional in its ingredients, but cuisine styles and cooking methods. But we're surrounded by water on both sides, so we're eating fish constantly, shrimp. Peru's famous for ceviches, but so is Mexico. The amount of seafood that we're eating, I feel like it's underplayed or maybe not recognized so much in the United States, but we eat so much seafood.
Not so much on the Gulf. The Gulf, the Nayarit region, which is on the on the other side, the Pacific, but I think it's so rich.
And they talk about it, we talk about Japan. Everybody knows Tsukiji, which is now Toyosu, as like the biggest seafood market in the world. The second one is Mexico City.
Oh, really?
The second biggest and the biggest one in the Americas is Mexico City. So all the seafood that gets fished in the Gulf and the Pacific and everything comes to Mexico City first. And then it's dispersed, everywhere else. So like similar to Japan, all the fish comes through Toyosu, and then it gets kind of dispersed.
So in the east, it's Japan. In the west, it's Mexico City.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. And talking about ceviche, you did give credit to Peru. That's their national dish, but very famous in Mexico as well. And the acid of choice in Mexico?
Limes.
Okay, just want to make sure that was said. A lot of people might be thinking it's lemons, but it's not.
When you do aguachiles too, I mean, you have to add that, and of course, definitely lime. I agree, but have to add some spice to it.
Yes,
okay,
for sure.
So let's talk about just kind of the history of how Mexican cuisine became what it is, because we know, everybody knows the story. You mentioned the Mayans and the Aztecs, and then the Spanish influence. That's kind of the biggest part of what's built the foundation of the Mexican cuisine. I think you can agree that over the years, maybe there's been some other cultures that have had some influence. But for the most part, what was brought from Spain and how was it incorporated, or was it incorporated? Is there some things that came from Spain that were incorporated into the ingredients that, Mexico had that kind of helped kind of develop what they have today? One thing I think about is what Mexico had was corn, because, in Europe and things, the crop was more wheat. And so it was more of a flour-based tortilla versus a corn tortilla in Mexico.
Yeah, definitely corn. I think as one of the main pre-Hispanic ingredients, and I think it's even considered like part of like God or something. That's where everything started, and agriculture and whatnot. And corn, I think, is one of our main ingredients. We had from Spain. I think one of the biggest ingredients we got is pork.
Oh, okay, that's a good one. Yeah, I wouldn't have even thought about that. But pork really came from Spain in introducing it to the Mexican cuisine.
Yeah, most of those proteins, like we had, and we talk about in the United States, like turkey was the big thing, but all the other kind of poultries kind of came from overseas. We were agriculturists, kind of first and foremost. So corn, beans, and like tomatoes are like the three plants that kind of we all grow together. And the reason we grow them together because each plant provides something for the nutrients that the other plant needs. So I feel like those were kind of the big threes. And then the Spanish came in and brought a lot of the different kinds of proteins that we kind of know and use in Mexico today. But we were a lot more farmers and we were ranchers and hunters,
And even the cattle and things like that was influenced from the States coming. When you talk about that's more up north anyway. So that's where that was introduced.
Yeah, but we're talking from where the culture, Mexican food originated. I feel like we've had 4 kind of renaissances in our cuisine. The first one is like the pre-Hispanic. So before Spain came, we had a huge, the Zacatecas and Zapotecas, like on the west side. We had the Aztecs kind of in the center of Mexico, and then towards the south, the Mayans. And that really kind of painted and guided where the cuisine was going from there. And then the Spanish came in, and the Spanish took a really weird approach to colonizing that was different from the British and different from everywhere else. Instead of trying to get rid of the other culture, they just,
merged it.
They just bred into it, and then instead of trying to get rid of it, they married and they had kids with these indigenous people, and that created like a mixed race, and then it just kind of kept the culture alive. Here in the United States, we don't really think about too much about Native American food. In Mexico, it was kind of the opposite. Everything that we had just kind of got taken for a ride.
It was
with
embraced.
The ingredients, yeah. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say embraced.
But you said it wasn't pushed out, so there was some sense of we can leave this here. We're okay with it.
Yeah, they more kind of like
married together.
Yeah, they married. Yeah, they married what they brought into it together instead of completely trying. I think in their mind they were trying to eliminate a little bit, but they were going about it through in a way that was.
Didn't really work.
That in the end kept it alive more so than getting rid of it.
Okay.
And then you have the revolution, and then you have this part of Mexico where we finally gained independence, and we were really proud of being Mexican and kind of touching back on those pre-Hispanic roots, but at the same time being a little bit more open. We opened the world to, we were talking about more cultures coming in. So, France, you mentioned Germany, but even, Asian, Chinese and Lebanese, and a lot of different other cultures that kind of came in. And now we're going through, I feel like the fourth and final renaissance, which is just like the more modern, now that we have more access to technology, more access to different cooking methods, I feel like Mexican food has really come into the world a little bit as not just delicious food to have on a weekday, but very high level, fine dining worthy cuisine, which I think is really special and cool.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
very
very
impressive.
cool.
Yes. Lebanese, we were talking also earlier, but we have a very big community of Lebanese.
And is this, when we talk about the immigrants that come to Mexico, are they primarily in Mexico City, or do you find that they go throughout the different? So I'm thinking their influence in a certain region with certain types of cuisine can be different.
There's certain regions. I think like Lebanese is very big in Mexico City, but there are pretty much different pockets throughout Mexico of different cultures.
Okay.
Yeah, but you got to think about Mexico City like.
Is it big
Center.
city?
It's
I'm
huge.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Millions of, like 20 million people, So it's like, New York City, Paris, Rome, Tokyo. It's a major metropolis.
It's a hub.
Yeah, it's a hub for it. So, if you're coming from Japan, Vietnam, Lebanon, wherever, you don't know about Zihuatanejo. You don't know about these little tiny places in Mexico. You know Mexico City. So where do you go? You go to Mexico City first, and then from there, maybe there's a little bit of dispersion. But one of the things I love and appreciate about Mexico City is how culturally diverse it is. You can find, just like New York City, almost any kind of food.
How about Houston, where we're at?
Let's get in there.
Houston
I
as
think
well. Yeah, but Houston, I feel like we're a lot smaller. So it's like on a smaller scale.
Okay.
Houston, we have, 6 million people maybe?
Probably closer to 8 now.
Okay, now so
within the Metroplex.
So Mexico City is like times 3.
Yes.
So it is a big city.
Yeah, 20 million plus. Well, it's actually getting smaller. It was growing a lot for a while. Now people are kind of pushing out of it a little.
I don't think people realize how big Mexico City actually is. I mean, you think about New York, and it's I think it's pushing 11 million, and I think Seoul, a big city in the world, that pushes 12, 13 million. You're talking 20 plus million people. I mean, I don't know. Is it the biggest city in the world, population-wise?
No, I think it's, I don't know if it's in India
Maybe
or
somewhere
India.
Okay, that would make sense. China or India.
Or Shanghai.
Or
I'm not sure.
I have a way that I like to describe to people in Mexico City. You know, when you're flying somewhere and you come out of the clouds, you expect the city to be ahead of you. You're already over Mexico City, and you have been for about 10 minutes when you start to land. So, like, it's, there's a long list of cities that I have no problem driving in. Mexico City is number 1 in the places that I will never, ever, ever drive a car. It's a crazy place. It's, you're flying over it for 10 minutes before you even land. So it's massive.
Is it not population dense? Is it spread out, or is it a combination that's spread out but is still population dense?
It is dense. I think there's certain places of the city that are definitely dense.
Okay, because you make that. I thought it was a very dense city, but when you say you can fly over it for 10 minutes before you land, it's spread out.
It's very spread out and population dense at the same time.
Yeah.
I would say there's tons of people. I mean, there's a lot of parks, so that accounts for the area, but it's very population dense.
And also the way the city functions, living inside the city itself, like right in the thick of it, is pretty expensive. So most people that work live in the outer parts. So it gets
the burbs. They live in the burbs.
Yeah, but it's a little bit it's a little bit different than the burbs here. So that they're all on the outside, kind of coming in. Similar concept, just executed a little differently.
Okay. I do have one question. I think if I have it, I'm assuming other people might have it as well. At least here in Texas, and I think this style of Mexican food has made its way throughout the United States. I think, that's one of the things I really love about Mexican food. I've been, appreciating it for 30 some years, and I think it's just grown, across the states. I don't care where you go, and for that matter, across the world. I think you can go to a lot of countries and there's Mexican food there. But what in the hell is Tex-Mex?
Oh my God!
Sorry.
That I'm with you, Brittany. That's one of my biggest
But I really, genuinely, I know I don't like a lot, because being in El Paso and, her family, my wife's family, who makes really good, I call it authentic. I don't know if it's authentic food, but better flavored food. I'll say it that way to be correct. I don't necessarily like what is deemed Tex-Mex, but I don't know what makes it Tex-Mex versus when do you cross that line? That now you're Tex-Mex and not Mexican food.
I think Tex-Mex, they picked, like the fajita, the meat, and then they mix it all in a bowl with queso and guacamole and cheese. That's how I see it, and, honestly, it had to be, I don't know.
So are you saying canned processed cheese is not a natural thing? Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, my God,
When the cheese is yellow, then you're just like, wait, why is this cheese yellow? I mean, there are some Mexican cheeses that are yellow, but generally, cheese is white.
It shouldn't be in a 65-ounce can that you... Okay.
No.
So the ballparks are doing it wrong with the nachos.
It's a thing here, but it's not Mexican.
I don't eat that. I'll just be
when
honest.
you talk, so I can respect Tex-Mex as its own cuisine.
Exactly.
You talk about like when you have a phone tree. If I whisper something in your ear and you whisper somebody like that, at the end of that exercise, what you said has gotten so
the telephone game.
The telephone game has gotten so misconstrued by the end of it. That's kind of what happens with Tex-Mex. They have this original concept. You have somebody coming over here from Mexico, and they're missing home. They want something that tastes familiar, but they look around and they don't have the ingredients to make it exactly. So what do? They do the best that they can and produce something that's different, but kind of cut from the same cloth a little bit.
Okay.
And then they have kids, and then their kids think about this dish. They kind of remember what it tastes like, but they're now further removed. They maybe live more inland and you can get even less ingredients. So you start they think they remember what it tastes like, they make something, so it just gets diluted and diluted and diluted. And not that there's anything wrong with it. Like, I feel like there's some decent Tex-Mex food here. I think there's people that are cooking the food at a high level with good ingredients. it's just not Mexican. And for me, a big kind of like culture shock / kind of horror story was the first time I moved to the United States here in Houston. I had a really close friend of mine. He was like, I think he was genuinely looking out for me, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to go eat Mexican food? I know you miss Mexican food." And in my mind, I was like really excited. I was like,
Please.
"Yes, let's go get some Mexican food." And we ended up at Taco Bell.
Oh God.
And he just thought tacos were tacos, and that's what all he knew was Mexican food. So I wasn't, and I hated it. I thought it was disgusting. I didn't want to eat it, but I didn't think he didn't know. He just thought this is Mexican food and this is what you guys eat. So a big part of it back then was the lack of technology. Flying used to be really expensive. You couldn't just look up a recipe online for what it's actually supposed to be. So everybody just kind of made it up as it went along.
Okay. You didn't say something. You have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but now I'm happy to see the transition throughout the years now. Now that all these ingredients are making it over, or they're being allowed, and seeing how people, like you doing this podcast, and people are becoming knowledgeable about it. I mean, you see major chefs in the Mexican cuisine now that are, as you said, elevated cuisine, and now people know what really Mexican, and you can have like really truly authentic Mexican cuisine now here in Houston and different places.
And you guys didn't mention something that I think about, and I think it's changed, which was, you think about a lot of cuisines from around the world, and it's kind of changed or Americanized, if you will, because of the palate and what they think we will like or can tolerate, or however you want to say it, depending on the type of cuisine. You all didn't say that. So it wasn't so much that the authentic type of flavors would be somewhat, I don't want to say off-putting, but maybe we wouldn't like them.
You didn't know
that was never thought to be an issue. It was just more of what's available to us, because maybe the ingredients are different in Mexico, that you grow more of whatever you need to make something in a certain style or way, and we don't necessarily have that, so we substitute with something else.
I think it's obviously going to be a little bit of both.
Okay.
Right? So you're limited by the ingredients that you have. If you're trying to create a business, though, you have to kind of appeal to the palates. But, one thing that I feel like is counter-argumentative to that idea is that, like she's talking about today, now that the ingredients are available, now that we are cooking a little bit more traditional Mexican cuisine, it's having a crazy amount of success. So I think people's view of the world used to be so much smaller because of technology. People were... what you didn't know it. And you didn't, there was so much more ignorance, I guess, that word's kind of like taboo and sounds negative, but we were just very...
It's not negative. It's just lack of knowledge.
We just didn't have the knowledge. We didn't have the resources. We didn't have an idea of what it was supposed to taste like. So our world was a lot smaller, and I feel like people were maybe not as adventurous back then. I feel like nationalism also takes a big part of it. Back in the day in the United States, we were... getting out of the world wars, we're the absolute best. Everything that America is the best. We don't need anything else. We don't need anybody else. And kind of as all societies are being regarded as more equals and not necessarily as lesser than, I think that's opened up the opportunity for cuisines to kind of develop and grow and bring more of their traditional flavors. But I do think people's palates have changed. I do think people are a lot more open-minded now. But I don't think at the same time that it wasn't that they just made food for Americans unless it was a business. I do really think that they brought...
That's what I mean for a business. I'm talking about,
Yeah.
where we can go out and experience, because most people aren't going to make Mexican food at home, right? If they wanted it, if you go to Missouri where I'm from, if you want Mexican food, you're going out, right? You're not going to try to make something at home unless it was, old El Paso tacos and you get the packet of taco seasoning.
Right.
You put it in your ground beef and hey, there you go.
Now you got Mexican food.
Squirt some sour cream on there and authentic.
Yeah. And certain spices, when I first came here, cumin was just such a dominant flavor.
One of mine is, what's the difference between cumin and cumino?
Comino is Spanish.
Yeah, it's the same.
So
it's the same. Okay,
Yeah.
because people will tell me it's different, and same with like Mexican oregano versus oregano.
Well, so Mexican oregano is different. So the oregano that you're going to buy in the supermarket, it's either going to be like Greek oregano or it's going to be Mexican oregano. I feel like they are... One of them is going to be a little bit more robust. One of them is going to be a little bit sweeter. It is going to make a difference in the dish.
Okay.
But with comino, it's cumin.
Okay.
It's
That's
just
kind
a
of what I
translation.
thought, but people were like, no, you didn't get the Mexican one. I'm like, okay, what's the difference? I never really knew the difference, and I couldn't taste the difference, so I didn't know, what am I missing here? But, okay.
And cumin it's very big in India and cuisine as well. So, and as you said, I think one is more like stronger, I guess, or more.
Well, and to your point, Maya, we were talking about in another episode that we recorded, cilantro. I think of that as a Mexican herb. I don't know if that's indigenous to Mexico or if it was brought in from somewhere else. But to your point, I think I've come to know as I explored the world of food, cilantro's everywhere now. I mean, there's so many cuisines that use cilantro to give it this, this freshness to a dish.
Yeah, I love it.
Is it indigenous? Do you guys know?
I don't think so. I'm
not
pretty sure it's European or Asian.
Okay, it was brought in.
Yeah.
Maybe Asian. Yeah, I don't know that part, honestly.
But I mean, it's used so much in Thailand.
In Thailand, they use a ton of cilantro.
Okay. Is that probably where it's from then?
I think so. Maybe.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe Europe. So in Europe, the coriander. A lot of
Seed.
dishes have coriander in it. That's what they call cilantro. Obviously, the seed, the spices. It could. In India, they use a lot of the seeds and the plant itself. So I'm not sure where the exact origins are, but I'm sure they're indigenous.
Okay.
For sure.
So I did a little research as I was getting prepared for this episode with you all. And one of the things I looked up was, when did Mexican food really start to, because on the border in Texas, it was known there and it was appreciated and loved there. But when did it really start taking off in the States? Do you guys have any idea when? Obviously, I didn't know the answer so I'm not acting like but it wasn't until the World Fair in Chicago, I think it was like 1934, where every state was allowed to have a booth or whatever to represent their state and what was a cuisine or a food from their state. And do you know what the food was there? You probably don't. I'm just going to tell you. It shocked me. I wouldn't have thought this knowing Mexican food, but it was the tamale.
Oh,
A tamal.
Tamal. Okay, tamale.
That's tamales.
No. Tamale doesn't exist.
It's one of Luis's
one tamal
largest pet
is a
peeves.
tamal, and two tamales are tamales. But there's no such thing as a tamale.
Tamale. That's a Tex-Mex
That's a
term.
Tex-Mex thing. Yeah.
That's the one I'm talking about, the Tex-Mex.
It's honestly one of his biggest pet peeves. Like, he corrects all of our friends on a weekly basis.
Tamale.
Easily.
It's just a tamal. Yeah.
It's a tamal. Okay, now I know. I won't make that mistake again. I did not know that. I would have thought taco or something else would have been the food, and the only reason I have that thought is knowing today, even into the world of technology, I know they have machines to make it. Back then they didn't. So making tamales were
Tamales.
It's
God,
plural.
I'm going to screw this up. Very, very hard, very labor intensive. So to get these out in a volume that could be purchased by people, I mean, that's a lot of work. And so I wouldn't have thought that would have been the choice to represent Texas/Mexico at a world fair when you talk about, hundreds of thousands of people coming through.
But going back to what Luis mentioned at the beginning, it's very labor intensive. A lot of our main dishes, mole, tamal, etc. It's very labor intensive. But as I mentioned, I think it was like a family affair and tradition. So you go from go to get the ingredients from the the agriculture part, and then bring them together. And it was a lot of parts of the family getting together, and somebody's cleaning the chiles, somebody's dealing with the corn, somebody's wrapping, some even take days, preparation, but it's I think that's what gives the value and the importance to each dish. And I can see tamal being, it has corn, a lot of the corn, and and the masa, and then the leaf of the tamal.
Also, I think they travel so well. So you're talking about making food for thousands of people. Making a taco, I think in that scenario would be so much more difficult because you're having to make them to order. So you're having to heat up the tortilla. You're having to either the taco could have been a guisado, which would be easier, or you're kind of frying it up and cooking it up on the spot. You're serving it.
That makes sense.
Then you need salsa. Then you need the garnish,
lettuce, tomato.
Cilantro, cebolla. It probably wouldn't be lettuce. I don't know. I don't know what tacos they were eating in the 1930s.
I'm a Tex-Mex guy, so
okay.
Yeah.
So but a tamal, you've already made them.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is steam them again, get them warmed up, and then you serve them.
Let me tell you a story. I'll let Brittany. You got a comment?
Well, nobody just makes one tamal. Like, you make a lot
Dozens.
of them.
Big pot.
Hundreds
But
of
it's
it. Like,
still
if you're
so
gonna do
labor
it,
intensive.
it's a labor intensive, but the thing is, if you're going to do it, you really go for it. You make as many as you can.
Right.
You sit there as a family. Like, we like to just kind of saran wrap our kitchen table. That way we can just like throw the whole thing in the trash when we're done at the end, and it's ours.
I've got a tamal story for you, and then I'm going to ask a question. I'll tell my story, and you guys can think about the answer. When did tamales become such a tradition for, at least in Texas, where since I've been here, as a Christmas kind of thing? Because, you know, when you get to Christmas season, I mean, I see everybody order your tamales. You know, lines at the tamale shops, what we call the authentic down by navigation and stuff. Get your tamales. So think about that. My tamale story is, I know all about tamales because my wife, when we started dating, I came from the Midwest, from Missouri, was in the military down in El Paso. And my wife, I came down, we were dating at the time, and she said, hey, we're going to go to my aunt's house. She made some tamales. Do you want some? And I go, she made them? And she's like, yeah, she made them. And I went, that is so weird. She goes, why is that weird? I go, man, I've been eating tamales for a while. We love them. She goes, you get those in Missouri? I go, yeah. Aisle 6 in the can. You just pop that baby open, and
Oh my God.
and she goes, oh my God, that is not a good tamale. So I went, really? And she went, yeah, that is disgusting. Don't eat those. I found out from watching the show on the tamal in the fair, and I'm so confused on which way to say it now. So you
No,
can.
you crushed it that time.
That's great.
Yeah, you've been doing good.
Tu tamales.
And when I watched the show that was kind of educating on that, they were talking about how canning had just become a thing in the 1930s and 40s, and how can we make these foods where they can be stored and shipped all over, and that was where that method came from. So that's how I got introduced. But back to the story with Sandra, she said, we're going to my aunt's house, and I'm like, great, I get to taste what's going to be an authentic tamal. This is great. Went over there. I'm digging through these things, and my wife's like, yeah, one's enough for me. I'm like, why aren't you guys eating? We get in the car, and they go, those were the worst tamales you've ever had. And I went, God dang it. They were great. So I still don't know if I've ever had a good one.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
We have to make some
Yeah, we
tamales.
have
have
to
to make
make-
this happen for you.
So when did it become a, kind of Christmas tradition? Because for Sandra and I will tell you, obviously in the States, Thanksgiving's a big holiday. That's the turkey holiday. When we get to Christmas, it's a big ham and it's tamales. That's what it is. I'm nailing this.
Nailed it.
And I don't know where, my wife doesn't have a mic in front of her. I'd ask her. But do you guys know about this tradition? Are you?
I mean, the tamales for us is like for a big celebration or big tradition kind of dish. So I don't. We have the same thing. For Christmas you do certain things,
Is that in
like
Mexico?
romeritos. I mean, there's a variety of dishes that you do
Okay.
for different holidays. But I think tamale can be considered like a multi-purpose kind of
absolutely.
celebratory.
I think
dish.
maybe where it comes from, just complete speculation here in the United States, is the
migration.
Christmas is when, it's a celebration. It's when families come together, right? So when the families come together, it's such a, like I said, labor-intensive dish.
So it's back to her getting everybody to make it together.
Everybody's together.
Okay.
Let's all sit down and just crank out hundreds of tamales.
That makes sense.
All together.
Yeah.
Like you
Okay.
said, if in a family that does it a lot, it's literally like an assembly line.
Yeah.
Like everybody has their job, everybody knows how to do it, and it doesn't take that long. And like I said, you're just hanging out with the fam. It just feels like a chill vibe. It doesn't feel like everybody's working. We're all just hanging out, knowing that we're gonna have amazing tamales when we're done. You're gonna be able to take some tamales with you and share them with your friend. But it's always been one of those things because it's so portable that you make a lot so that you can share them with other people. In my family, we have a tradition for the 6th of January. We have the rosca de reyes,
Like the king cake.
the king cake.
Yeah.
And there's like little babies inside. And if you cut the cake and you get the little baby, then you have to make tamales for the family.
For there's another for a Catholic celebration on February the 2nd, the Candelaria.
Yeah.
Dia de la Candelaria. So that's a big tradition. And also the tamales, it says multi-purpose. If you have too many, next day you can toast them. I don't know if you ever done that, like on a on a pan, like really, really, like almost to a burning point. It changes the flavor.
Do you eat them with eggs? Because eggs are great.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it something people do or no? Would I be kind of like looked at funny if I put eggs on my
like eggs on top of them.
Why not?
I mean, you can.
You can. I never
You're
said.
looking at me
There's no
funny
rule
now.
against
I mean,
it.
I've just never had them.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay, so tell me if this is true. Well, let's get it before I get there because I have a thought on something that I found out when I ordered it at a restaurant in Mexico, and you can tell me later if it's actually a thing or not. I want to talk a little bit about what are the more common foods that have come across to us that we enjoy. I never thought about tamales as being a common food. I mean, again, it was once in a while, but it seems like it is around there. But the more common ones would be, I think, fajitas have become so popular. Obviously, the taco,
Yeah.
the burrito, and then enchiladas, I think, are the ones that would come to mind if I said name me 3 or 4 dishes from a Mexican menu. I think in most Americans, these would be their 3 or 4.
Right.
I don't think enchiladas, though, like the way that American people envision them, would be what they would be is what they would be served in Mexico.
Okay, so this is what I want to talk about because how have they changed? Let's start with the taco. Because when I watched and did some research on the taco, okay, sorry, pause because Bear always likes to make an appearance.
An
on the show.
entrance.
He's a sweetie.
He's
Yeah.
a sweet boy.
So we were talking about the taco, and I was watching the episode where they talked about, and I did not know this, I thought tacos traditionally in Mexico were a soft taco. You know, even a corn tortilla was just warmed up and eaten where you just put in your ingredients, fold it, and eat it. But I found, and tell me if this is right or wrong, they said no, it's actually a fried taco is actually what they liked in Mexico. And they were showing these Mexican women kind of starting to par fry a corn tortilla, and then they would take like a rolling pin, shape it around it, and then they would start to fill it up.
Huh?
No, actually, I think you were right on your initial thought. Actually, and the tortillas, actually, you have the lady making the tortillas by hand.
Yeah.
Put them in, on
Press.
the comal. Yeah, or just by hand, you have put them on the comal, and they said you have your guisos or, dishes pre-made and put them in there. And
Okay, because I don't think of a fried, I thought a fried tortilla was more of an American thing.
I mean,
have
fried
flautas.
We have a lot, so
Flautas,
or like a panucho.
Quesadillas, but-
Oh, I
Or
love panuchos.
there's many like flautitas, taquitos. Like there is definitely fried iterations of the taco.
Okay.
But if you go anywhere in Mexico, like and maybe this was a regional video or regional
Okay.
thing that you were that you researched. Maybe in some region, maybe they do because, like I said, it's Mexico's so regional, and even within each region, like everybody
You
has
have
a little bit
variations,
different.
yeah.
Everybody
Okay.
has like little variations. So I'm sure that's a thing somewhere, but by and large, it's going to be a soft corn tortilla.
Okay, so the taco. I made comment earlier about gotta have some lettuce and you went lettuce.
No,
No lettuce.
cilantro,
Cilantro,
cebolla,
Tell me, tell the
salsa,
listeners
lime.
what would be the traditional protein or proteins that you could use for a traditional taco, and then how would you dress it?
So that's why I think that question is so challenging because when you said the taco to you is a thing. To me, a taco is a vehicle for
It's a Mexican spoon.
It's
It's
a
a Mexican. That's a really
spoon.
good way to put that.
Yeah.
It's a Mexican what?
The tortillas are Mexican spoon, so you
There's
can
no
put pretty
you
much.
can put
Then
any.
how can you get mad at me about lettuce?
Because we don't put lettuce in our.
But you just said you could put anything.
You
You
can
know,
put
there
anything
are
in
rules.
No,
In a
you can put
flauta.
anything in a Tex-Mex taco. In a flauta.
In a flauta with cheese
you-
and sour
Yeah.
cream and
Some cotija,
salsa.
some crema.
Okay,
and
so-
you put some lettuce on.
Okay, well, flautas, for those who don't know, you can describe it, but those are Sandra's favorite dish.
Or taquitos.
So yeah,
Taquitos.
taquitos.
Yeah, but not really. I mean, taquitos to me, because people are going to think taquitos and go buy, at Sam's that big bag of taquitos and throw them in. That's not a
Oh,
flauta.
that's hangover food. That's not even Mexican food.
Right,
That's
but
hangover
in
food.
Mexico, those terms are like interchangeable.
Are they
Una
really?
flautita, un taquito, banderitas. They call like little flags because they'll have like 3 flautas chiquitas, and then you'll put like a green sauce, the crema, and then the red sauce.
Here's
So
what I
that's
would
like
say:
the
you
Mexican
can't
flag.
buy flautas or taquitos from a store pre-made and warm them up.
But I think
you have
that's-
to make it fresh.
That's one of
to
the
be good.
big wonders or beautiful things about Mexican cuisine. It's homemade.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to any Mexico's state and you want to eat, street food, and everything's gonna be pretty much homemade.
And to your point, in a
So-
flauta, it's shredded chicken is what we use, rolled in a taco, fried, long and round, and then to your point, lettuce,
Tomato,
tomato,
flauta,
Yeah.
some sour cream, maybe a little guacamole.
Crema. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you can make them with barbacoa, you know. So you made like a lot of barbacoa. You have leftover. You put them in a
You know what I
flauta
make with barbacoa?
or what?
Huevos rancheros.
Oh my god! Yeah.
I like the egg.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the egg.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the original thing, like she said, the taco is a Mexican spoon. So I wouldn't say so. Tacos al pastor is no more traditional than carnitas, which is no more traditional than lengua or nana and buche and all these different cuts of barbacoa, cachete. There's all of those are equally as traditional. All of those are equally as authentic. It's just the tortilla is a vehicle. For
And really what you're saying is the tortilla is a spoon. And what you're doing is it's a huge spoon. You're filling it up with everything. You take multiple bites out of that spoon. And I say that only because I know my wife uses the tortilla as a spoon. I mean, she can make some eggs and stuff on her plate with little papas and stuff. And I'm like, hey, you need a fork? No. I got a flour tortilla. I just pinch me off a piece and get my egg and my potato,
or
and I'm good.
You can roll it up.
Or you can roll it up.
Yeah.
So many different uses of it. There's not, to me, when you say taco, no protein comes up. Like I don't think of a specific protein when I think about a taco because there's a million different tacos you can have and they're all.
Here's a question for you guys. Corn or flour, does it matter? Is it okay to do any kind of taco? Because you said it's just a spoon, but are there some rules or guidelines that, look, if you're going to have fajitas are fine on a flour tortilla, but a ground beef kind of taco should be, or carnitas should be on a corn tortilla. Is there any kind of rule, or is it whatever your preference
I think
is?
that's your preference. I mean, I think that's a little regional. I feel like flour tortillas are more on the north part of the country, so that relates to fajitas. You know, as Luis mentioned, the meat and the ranchers, it was bigger, or bigger on that side. So
Do you guys have a preference?
I think for 99% of tacos, I'm going to have a corn tortilla.
Same here.
Except for gringas are made with a flour tortilla.
So I was gonna say
True.
a gringa. So like
I love
tacos al
gringa.
pastor, you order a gringa,
With
and it's
cheese.
gonna be like a quesadilla with pastor. So
Okay.
in that iteration, I prefer the flour tortilla, but that's its own dish.
It resists
different.
resists the grease of the cheese.
Yes, yeah, it holds up better. It's less fragile. But I would never have un taco de carnitas or lengua or barbacoa with a flour tortilla.
Yeah, it doesn't even sound right.
That's
No, it sounds weird. Like a mismatch.
Yeah.
I would never.
I actually just prefer corn tortilla. I don't know why. I just do. But I
No,
just didn't know
yeah.
if there was any kind of a rule there.
I mean, like I said, there's no rule. You eat your food however you want, but if you order a taco in Mexico, all over the country, the chances of you getting a flour tortilla are infinitely small.
Let's
Yes.
see if this changes things, and I think it does. What if I order a burrito?
I think it does, definitely.
It's a big
Yeah.
flour.
I mean,
You
it's
can't-
the
yeah,
size.
flour
You cannot
tortilla.
make a
You can't make a corn tortilla big. It's not going to be pliable enough to.
But almost nowhere in Mexico are you going to find a burrito on a menu.
What?
Unless you're on the northern part.
Unless you're like in Juarez, as
Yeah.
you say, or
So are you
Chihuahua.
saying the Americans have kind of made this, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you know
Creators?
that if you look online, I feel like there's a lot of different origin stories. Nobody can kind of pinpoint one. The one that I was raised on and like came to the United States knowing was up in the north side in Sinaloa. They worked all over in horses, right? So they needed to be able to take food with them so that they could eat lunch, and they needed something that was self-contained.
so that's their sandwich.
You know, yeah, exactly. So they invented this burrito out of kind of necessity. They would ride their horses over the United States, work over there, and then
We had mayo and bologna, and they got rice and beans and
Yep.
chicken and lettuce and tomato and salsa.
Yep.
I think they won.
and I think
Definitely.
so too.
Yeah.
So to me, that's where the origin of the burrito comes from, and then they brought it over to the United States, and then it just blew up.
Are you
Loved it.
telling me then the chimichanga's not a thing?
No. Oh my God! It's like the tamale.
I mean, we don't make a big burrito. Come on. A lot of us listening are going, what the hell?
Yeah. I think that's happening a lot throughout the few last years. You know, with in general. Oh, this is not Mexican. What do you mean? It's not? No.
So does it bother you, or do you not really care? It's just kind of still an honor that they've taken whatever your food is or whatever and changed it to whatever. Is that okay? I mean, because I see a lot of people, you know, in the world of, you know, being a cook or a chef, trying to be creative, taking a classic dish and how would you change it and things like that. Is that okay with Mexican cuisine, or is there a part of you that says, look, the classics are the classics, come up with something new?
I mean, you can adjust it, but don't call it Mexican.
I was just about to say.
I think the thing that kills me the most is how people lose it over the Mexican pizza at Taco Bell. Like, people, that's supposed to be a tlayuda. It's supposed to be authentic, like real Oaxacan food. And it's just been absolutely taken out of context. Like, you cannot call that Mexican food.
So like I said, with Tex-Mex, when I first moved here, so against it. I thought it was disgusting. I thought it wasn't Mexican food.
Me too.
But if you tell me we're eating Tex-Mex and we're not eating Mexican food, then I don't have this negative bias
expectation.
Like a preconceived notion.
It's like, if you like Tex-Mex, like we can have fajitas, I can enjoy it. You know, if you're drunk and you're drinking a lot of beer, queso, like the shitty Tex-Mex queso,
the plastic, whatever
the plastic
we're eating.
one, it goes. It's warm with the
Processed cheese.
Yeah,
Processed
it's
cheese.
totally fine. You know, if we're watching a football game, I'm gonna eat some of it. But if we're talking, if you're like, oh, do you want to eat some Mexican? And like going back to my original story, if you tell me, hey, we're gonna eat Mexican food, and you serve me this, I'm gonna be sad, disappointed, a little grossed out.
If I tell you we're going to eat Mexican food and your friend takes you to Taco Bell, it's a problem.
It's a problem in that
Turn
we're not
around.
having Mexican food. But if like I said, so much of that is born from ignorance that you can't be mad if he thought that was Mexican food. So if you're just ignorant and are trying to do right by me, but you're just wrong because you're ignorant, I can educate you. That's a learning experience. I can actually share now real Mexican food with you.
Yeah, you said, hey, move over, let me drive.
It's like a win-win. Now, if you know that's not really Mexican food and you still want to call it Mexican food, then we're no longer ignorant. We're just dumb. You know what I'm saying?
We're just lying to ourselves at that point.
We don't eat Taco Bell. I know a lot of people like it for what it is, but I mean, I'm not going to judge you if you do eat it. Most people will tell you it's that, 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. food.
Yeah.
Live in the bar.
Yeah.
Again, I wouldn't classify it as Mexican food. I would, however, give it a solid, entry in hangover food.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely what Taco Bell is.
Yes.
So I want to get back to something you said, because I think about the Italians, too, that beans is a big part in their culture for the protein of what they're eating. And I didn't know it in Mexico, but you said beans are a huge ingredient.
Oh, I mean, besides corn, beans, I feel like is right up there. Beans is the accompaniment to everything.
Because we just think here in the States, and the reason why I asked that is there something different that we don't know, because we think charro, and then of course we think
Refried.
Is that it, or is there something we're missing?
No, not only there's a lot of different applications for them, but there's so many different varieties of beans.
Okay.
As corn.
Yeah, and corn. So we were talking before the podcast, but I have a poster of like the hundreds of different varieties of corn in the United States. I have a poster of the 100 different types of peppers in the United States, and beans are kind of the same way. If you go to a mercado in Mexico, there's dozens of different kinds of beans, and they're each going to have their own different flavor. They're each going to have their own different texture, and they're each going to provide something else to the dish.
They're not just eaten as a side. They're incorporated into a stew or something else.
Or as an accompaniment. Like they can
be, obviously, but they're in addition to that, they're used in other applications.
I feel like for most Mexicans, you're going to have rice, beans, and corn. And then the other thing is going to change. But the rice, beans, and corn, you're basically going to eat.
And by corn, you mean tortilla?
Yeah, and maíz in any form.
Okay.
It might not even be a tortilla, but it's going to be...
What would be another variation of a corn on a plate if it's not a tortilla?
Well, that's kind of funny because that's something that we have like sopes, gorditas, enchiladas, tacos. And everything is like a corn, corn tortilla or corn dough, or, handle different stuff with a guisado or a protein, as you were saying. It's just kind of the same thing in different presentation.
Yeah.
It's either rolled or it's dough
Flat,
or it's stuffed or it's filled. But like usually it took me a long time because I was learning all these things. It's mostly based on shape, whether it's and then whether it's stuffed or filled beyond that. But it's very much like it. Like there's something called a huarache. It's like a giant sandal shape, but it's like a thicker masa that you put things on top of.
And then you're going to have itacates, which can be stuffed or just like cut open, or like a gordita. or you can have
Why aren't gorditas more popular in El Paso, right on the border of Mexico?
Why, but they're great.
Gorditas are huge. I mean, food trucks are gordita food trucks here in Houston area. You can find them, but they're not as prevalent as in other parts of Texas where they're everywhere.
I love them for breakfast, especially. And Luisa's dad.
Breakfast.
Well,
What do you stuff it with for breakfast? Is it still meats and stuff?
Everything, yeah.
Okay, so
everything.
it's not like the Mexican kolache.
No.
You're not putting egg and stuff.
No,
it's still a meat
It's
kind
still,
of.
yeah.
Chicharrón.
Chicharrón.
Oh my God, I
You
want
put lettuce in it.
cheese and salsa.
Yeah.
And onions.
Yeah. We don't put lettuce in a lot of things.
I gotta ask. So we're doing that. That's one wrong that, hey, we all are learning something. The iceberg lettuce chopped up is not a thing on Mexican food.
I don't even think iceberg lettuce is really even a thing in Mexico at all.
Really?
We use it for like pozole
Yeah, for pozole, for sure.
and
That's not the only
flautas.
thing.
I cannot recall.
Salpicón.
Salpicón, like a
dish.
But it's
like a
not-
picadillo.
Like iceberg's a weird kind of lettuce too. Like it's not all that common.
It's not
but, like,
flavorful. It's just
not
more of a
flavorful,
textureful
yeah.
kind of crunch to that.
Yeah, we'll use it in pozole for sure. That's like, to
Pozole.
me, like, that's
I
like
forgot about
if we're
pozole.
thinking
Yeah, I
about where
love
we're
it.
going to toss the topping.
I mean,
And then
so
we
many
talked about flautas. But outside of that,
Not really.
very rarely
Okay.
we're eating.
Couple more questions because I do want to get into some drinks, which I think are underrated. You know, the drinks of Mexico, other than, you know, obviously the world knows the beer that comes from there. But, you know, there's some other
Tequila.
things that they do, wine being one of them.
They're not Mexican.
I want to ask, we talked about the tamales, the burritos, enchiladas. Is enchiladas an American thing or is that a Mexican thing?
Mexican.
It's super Mexican.
It's Mexican.
Super Mexican.
Is it in the same style that we think of?
No. So here, in one of the before the podcast, Brittany talked about you mentioned the difference between Tex-Mex and Mexican food, and here Mexican food, if you just drown it in cheese, it becomes Tex-Mex food. And I feel like in Mexico, cheese is used as a small garnish. You'll have some cotija or some queso fresco that you'll put a little bit on top of your taco, a little bit on the enchilada, but having the enchilada just be drowned in cheese and just being like a cheese enchilada being stuffed with cheese and then drowned in cheese just doesn't play over.
Me either.
Yeah.
My favorite enchilada is what they call a pastel azteca, which literally means Aztec cake. And to me, that's like the most traditional enchilada. And it's just like layers of corn and like the tortilla, maybe some corn as well, some calabacitas, some mushroom, and then bathed in a green salsa.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
my favorite enchilada, you have to like talk Luis's mom into making it, is enchiladas potosinas, because they're fried in red salsa. So like your whole kitchen is red. But
Really?
So
they're
you're doing
incredible.
the salsa and then you fry them once they've been bathed. So like
Oh,
the
so you
sauce,
dip them
You
like
dip
you
them in the
would,
sauce
like the
first.
enchilada sauce dipping them, but then you're going to fry it.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
And that's
okay,
actually how enchiladas typically are made in Mexico.
Yes.
And I think the potosinas are stuffed with potato and carrots.
Potato,
uh,
carrot.
Yep, and peas
Yeah,
sometimes.
and
too,
peas,
yeah.
yeah.
That's my favorite kind.
Okay, what are 2 or 3 Mexican dishes that maybe are known a little bit in the States, but not as much that you think should get more love, more run? Are there a couple?
For me, the one that comes to mind, the one that we're going to have as a main course today is chiles en nogada. I think it is a dish super representative of Mexico as far as our approach to food, the different ingredients that we use, and it's literally the Mexican flag on a plate. When I explain this dish to a lot of my American friends, at first they're like very hesitant of it. I feel like in Mexico we're known for using a lot of chiles and a lot of spices and like kind of these huge flavors. This has a lot of flavor, but all the flavor comes from fruit. And that's something that I feel like in a lot of our moles we use fruit, and a lot of different salsas and stuff we'll use fruit that maybe doesn't get recognized and hasn't come to the United States just yet. But the chiles en nogada, it's a picadillo, so it's going to be like ground meat, maybe with some ground pork as well. And it's going to have obviously your tomato, your onion, your garlic. So traditional picadillo, but then it gets flavored with pear, it gets flavored with apple.
So no jalapeno?
So no chiles, no
Okay.
spices, no cilantro, no nothing, just fruits. We use a cactus called biznaga, which we love it so much we're eating it to extinction. It's like harder to find right now in Mexico just because we consume so much of it. We candy it, and they make it into what's called a citron. and you chop that up, throw it in there, and then it's just nuts and fruits for the filling. And then you stuff that into a poblano pepper that's kind of been charred, and then you pour nogada, which is like a creamy, nutty sauce on top, and then you garnish it with pomegranate seeds and then a little bit of parsley. It's fruit on fruit on fruit. It's a little sweet, but it's very unctuous, very savory, and it's just a very, very unique dish. But to me, it screams Mexico. We normally eat it when pomegranates are in season, so September through kind of December. But all over Mexico is generally eaten like around Mexican Independence Day, which just happened about a week ago.
What are we drinking with this?
I brought a red wine from Mexico called Icaro, which I think is going to pair really, really well. It's, I think, like 60, this iteration of it's like 61% Nebbiolo and 39% Cabernet Sauvignon.
That's an interesting blend.
Yeah.
When you think about those two types of grapes, but that's going to be fun to try. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys to try it. It's one of my favorite wines made in Mexico, and I think it's going to go really well with
I think it's considered a very fancy dish. It's a very elegant dish. And I think Porfirio Diaz, which was a president of Mexico, which I think it was his dish, it was like how you treated the president. It's very impressive. I wanted to touch, you mentioned mole, and I think we talked a little bit about that, but mole it has like pretty much the definition. It's it has to have peppers, a lot of seasoning, different seasonings, and there's like million different moles.
Well, and you guys said something that I think should be said again on the actual podcast, which is mole. I think most of us in the States who have had it or seen it in a restaurant have one perception of what that is when you say mole, but mole actually means
like it's like
it's
you
sauce.
mentioned, like a curry.
It's like a curry.
Yeah.
So back in it's the same thing. 10 years ago, if you mentioned curry in the United States, people were thinking yellow Indian curry. But now, as more cuisines are coming in the world, you talk Thailand, curry doesn't mean anything. It's just a sauce. So green curry and masuman curry and Penang
Japanese curry even.
Yeah, they're
it's
just
completely different.
They're so different. There's not one underlying theme that kind of connects them all. It's just a sauce that everything is cooked into. That kind of just gives it a flavor profile but it can be very different. And even moles within certain regions in Mexico are going to be called different things. Are going to have different things. So here you say a traditional mole. Well, black mole can be a traditional mole. Mm-hmm. Green mole can be a traditional mole. Mole is just sauce.
And for me, I'm just saying what Americans think.
Yeah.
I don't think we see it anywhere other than that cocoa kind of mole.
With
That's
the chocolate,
what's.
yeah.
the
No,
chocolate. But to your point, go ahead. I didn't mean
Yeah,
to-
it does have a lot of ingredients, but it has to have like peppers, seasonings, some of them chocolate, seeds, a lot of seeds. We put even bread in there, like bolillos, tortillas, as a thickening agent. So.
And making that with your mom, I do know it can be spicy.
Yeah, I mean, if you use the right peppers, it depends. But yeah.
I think that's a great topic to talk about a little bit more because, again, our perception of mole being kind of this one thing, it's not. You're kind of talking about it can be a lot, but you said there's like, what was it, 7 or 9 that are considered the kind of the...
There's 7.
There's like 7 mother moles from Oaxaca.
Right.
So the tradition of moles is, I think, huge there. Each in Oaxaca, there's like 9 different indigenous regions, and they each one kind of have their own approach to what a mole can be. So it's going to be different, but there's like 7 mother moles, and most of the moles are going to be a variation on that. But we were talking about one of my favorite moles from the center of Mexico from Puebla. It's called mole verde. That's what we call it. But in Oaxaca, that's going to be called mole pipián because it uses pepitas, which are the pumpkin seeds, as the base for this mole. Obviously, it's going to have chile, it's going to have cilantro, it's going to have tomatillo, all these other things. But just depending where you are in Mexico, you're going to have a mole be called something different. Mm-hmm. It's similar to, we're going to get into mezcal and other drinks later. Mezcales, depending on the region that they're at, are going to be called different things because the indigenous people there knew it by that name. So a mole in the same mole in 5 different places in Mexico is going to be called different things, and everybody does it a little bit differently. I used this example the other day when I was explaining it to a friend, but it's like if you go to Italy, every grandma has their own version of making a sauce, right? And they're all going to be different. They're all going to have slightly more of this.
They're all going to be good.
Yes. And none of them are less traditional.
No, another thing is region based. What ingredients are in your region or what's closer to you. I mean, it might be a green mole, but you said these peppers are better here or these.
So are there some moles, Maya, that you would like to see become more popular in the States that you
I think
really
definitely.
enjoy?
I'm with him. I love green mole, but like yellow mole.
Oh, the
Oh my
best.
God, I love
Mole
it.
amarillo.
Mole amarillo. Oh my God, it's like it has a little bit of sweetness, tartness, and it's the thing is that
Do all moles have some spice to them, or are they all
No.
made with peppers, or are there some that aren't? Are all moles savory, or can you have a more sweet
Well,
mole?
they're not going to be sweet. Like they're all going to be savory, but some of
Okay.
them, like she was saying, that mole amarillo has a little bit of sweetness to it. But you said spice. So, and we were talking about this earlier. Chiles, some of them are spicy and some of them aren't. A lot of the chiles we use, especially the dried chiles in Mexico, we're not using them for spice.
flavor.
We're using them for flavor. Yeah. So I wouldn't consider, I mean, for jalapeno or for serrano or habanero, yes, you're getting the spice out of it. But for a chile morita or puya or cascabel, all these different chiles, you're using them for different flavors, not to spice up a dish. So a lot of the moles have these peppers in them, but they're not going to be spicy because they're not using them as a spicy agent.
There's some that can like there's a guajillo that can be like
Guajillo,
sometimes
yeah.
spicy.
Arbol.
There's some that arbol.
The arbol is going to be super spicy.
Super spicy. So
spicy.
it depends. I mean, you're not gonna be like a hot sauce, but they
So-
can have like a little kick to it.
Is spice something that all Mexicans enjoy to a certain level, or are there some regions that just spice isn't part of what they do? Because I've heard some people tell me not all places in Mexico like spice. And I went, really? I thought, spice is what, jalapenos is what I think about when I think Mexico. If you ask me what spice, I'm going jalapeno. But is it something that's not everywhere?
I think it's pretty generalized. I think it's everywhere. I think,
There's
but
some
and it's
version
the
of
same.
spice. To
It's-
what
yeah.
degree might be different, but
Right.
Right. So culturally, we love spice, right?
Okay.
But, everybody's sensibilities are different. Some people have delicate stomachs. So one of my
well, we have names for them. So.
like one of my great aunts, like she will cook spicy food for you, but she will also on her portion use a lot less spice just because it like messes her up,
Yeah.
gastrointestinally. But in general, even kids, when I was a kid, I got used to eating really spicy food really early. And it's one of those things that you can train your palate, right? The more spicy food you eat, the better you can handle spicy food. The more you kind of crave it, so that you raise the spicy level up a little bit. Like when
Kind
you're
of like drinking bourbon.
you get higher proof. You
You start to
absolutely.
get the flavors of what's actually happening.
And I like that you say the flavors because like I feel like they really respect spice in Mexico, but like we don't respect spice here. Like we consider it like a challenge, which I the spiciest burger, can you survive it? That single spicy chips that challenge.
So they
But you don't-
integrate it.
Yeah, like you don't really get that in Mexico. It's not like can you handle this? It's like it's something to enhance the dish, not to just completely destroy your palate.
And actually, a jalapeno it's the cuaresmeño in Mexico, and
Yeah.
I think it's not the most common. I think you see serrano,
Serrano.
piquin,
Is serrano more-
habanero.
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't have thought that.
Actually, the cuaresmeño, which is the jalapeno, it's kind of on the background,
Okay.
Yeah, only people that can't handle the serrano are going to get cuaresmeños,
Yes.
or certain salsas call for that kind of pepper. But in general, the serrano pepper is our go-to pepper.
Okay. Okay, let me ask you guys this. Comfort food. If I say, because in America, again, depending on what part of the country you're from, every region has a comfort food. I'm assuming Mexico does. Is there something that's considered a comfort food? That you're going to indulge a little bit. You're going to really go after.
Well, so when you say comfort food, I'm thinking like if I'm...
That's
I'm thinking you're
personal?
taking a nap
I
when
think
you're
so.
done.
I think that, I think it's
Yeah.
very personal. Maybe like if
memories.
But there's some dishes that would fall into that category, is what I'm asking.
Because I think we go back to the same. It can be a torta or a gordita or menudo, pozole.
Okay.
to me, the first dish that came right away was caldo de pollo. Like
same.
if you're not feeling good, or like I'm thinking about my mom, un caldito de pollo is like I feel like it can cure cancer. Like it's hard. It's good for the soul. It's good for the body.
And the ingredients that are in it are amazing. You get a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So to me, like when you say comfort food, that was the first thing I thought of.
I
But
thought of pozole.
yeah,
I thought of menudo, so I'm thinking
I was
where
thinking
soups.
soup.
yeah, soups, I guess. But
I thought we did the menudo. That's not from us?
No,
I'm kidding.
I like where.
You guys are looking at me like this guy doesn't know.
No, I was thinking like, damn, you know a good place for menudo?
I know.
Where'd you find it?
Somebody to my right is still looking.
Yeah.
Okay, is there appetizers? You know, when we have meals here, we always have an appetizer. Are there some small type bites, or is this where empanadas would come in? Is that an appetizer? Is this a meal? Are there appetizers in the foods of? Because I know there's street food and there's food you grab on the go, but is there an appetizer?
One of my favorite meal times in Mexico is botanas. So like you have a whole meal time that's legitimately designed around snacks and appetizers.
So it's
the best
tapas
thing
of
ever.
Mexico.
Yeah, kind of.
But you can also eat chips during botanas because the chips of Mexico.
Cacahuates, peanuts.
Cacahuates like that. Like those snacks could be an entire episode by themselves.
So if you're having dinner or lunch or whatever at a Mexican person's house, it's not course style, kind of like in the United States that we're used to, that we're going to have a appetizer course and then maybe a super salad course, and then we have botana, which can be anything, like little cacahuates, like peanuts, chips, jicama, pepino,
Ham and cheese.
Ham and cheese.
yeah,
Just
like
roll up to
like charcuterie or whatever.
Okay, that's very cool.
So those would be, to me, like when I think appetizers are like pre-meal, we're having botana. We're all snacking kind of while the food's coming together because the whole family's already there. So what are you gonna do? We can't let them.
Have to entertain them until
Yeah,
dinner's
you gotta
ready.
entertain them. So what do we do?
Because
We're all gonna
everything
have
takes a long
botana.
time.
We're gonna have a little tequila, maybe a beer.
Okay.
You just brought something to my mind that it's very, I don't know how much people know about this, but in las cantinas, which are bars in Mexico, it's very common that you go into the cantinas and you order one drink and then you get a botana.
Yeah.
And it can be like a shooter of shrimp soup, caldo de camarón.
That's my
favorite.
And next one you get peanuts. Next one you get beef broth. I mean, and every drink that you get, they give you like a different botana. or
Oh,
different
really?
snack.
Yeah, so
That's kind of a fun game.
Yeah, in a
It's the
traditional
best.
cantina, like she said, you show up. They don't want you to get super tossed, and they want you to drink as much as possible. So you show up, order a drink, and you get a little botanita, a little snack with your.
Okay, I'm going to let you guys know. I asked you a loaded question, and you guys didn't pass. Okay. Appetizers. How can you not say chips and salsa?
Well, we get, and some places give you
Do they have chips and salsa? in Mexico?
Totopos.
Is that an American
Yeah,
thing?
totopos with
yeah.
bean, and they give you we have pickled garlic and carrots, and
You have pickles and garlic.
pickled.
pickled garlic.
So it's a thing.
Yeah,
It is a
and,
thing.
and mushrooms and cauliflower and all these different things that you snack on. They'll give you frijoles. I mean, you can order guacamole.
Just so people who don't know, frijoles are beans.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you get your totopos and you're munching on them with maybe a little bit of salsa, but it's not.
It's not the chips and
It's
salsa
not
we
chips
think.
and salsa.
No.
Yeah, it's just you get totopos to snack on, and what else is on the table with the totopos? The pickle rajas or whatever it may be, and then maybe a little salsa. Then you might bring out some frijoles, maybe some guacamole.
Okay, the other appetizer you didn't mention that I thought of, maybe it's an American thing, the nachos.
Yeah, American thing.
It's pretty American. Luis makes a pretty great version though for when we're really hungry and have very little things.
So it's
but,
not an
mostly
appetizer, it's a
American.
meal. Can it be both?
Chilaquiles is the closest that I can think of,
Yeah.
but it's nachos. I don't think there's
I
a
will
Mexican
say-
version.
No.
The Mexican culture has perfected eating chips as a meal, and I'm here for it.
So she mentioned chilaquiles earlier, which I think are the greatest
Well,
breakfast
I mean,
Of all
food
time.
in the
No,
world.
I don't know about greatest, but it's up there for me. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So and so with the different kind of salsas that you can make, your chilaquiles can be a ton of different ways. You got the chilaquiles. You're gonna have beans. You're gonna have a fried egg on them. You can put
Some people
chicken.
don't put an egg. Is that weird?
No. So if you go to a restaurant in Mexico, you get
mostly
a choice.
you eat it with that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get without it. You can get with chicken. You can get with tasajo if you're in Oaxaca. Or
That brings me to the question I didn't ask earlier when we were talking about enchiladas. When I would eat, where I found this out, 3 decades ago, was in Juarez. When we would go down to a Mexican restaurant and I would order enchiladas, they would always ask me if I wanted a huevo or no huevo. And I said, didn't know you could do that, but yeah, who's going to say no to an egg? And ever since then now, when we make enchiladas, and when friends come over, we introduce them to the egg on top, the over easy egg, and cut that yolk and silky and rich. Is that
I
a thing
love
for
it.
you guys?
No, I mean you can have it, but it's typically an addition, as you mentioned.
yes,
It's not like a, yeah.
yeah. So we were just in Oaxaca like a month and a
month
half,
ago?
2 months ago. and you order your breakfast, that you're gonna have enmoladas, so you're gonna have or enfrijoladas or whatever. That's the main dish.
You keep saying these things like everybody knows what they are.
Well, they're different. So like an enmolada would be like a enchilada, but with mole.
Okay.
So the sauce is around and in it, it's mole.
Yeah. So
Okay.
inside the enchilada, you're normally chicken or whatever protein, and then on top of that, the sauce that it's bathed in is mole.
Okay.
And frijoladas, same exact concept, but the sauce is gonna be made of beans.
Okay.
Enchilada, same exact concept, but the sauce is going to be made of salsa.
Entomatadas.
And tomatadas is going to be
That's my favorite.
tomatoes.
Okay, very interesting.
So the concept of an enchilada can be kind of made a bunch of different ways, but you order that for breakfast, and then that's just what the dish comes with. But if you want to add a fried egg, it's breakfast time, so you can add a fried egg.
That's okay to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. You mentioned tomatoes. I think people who don't know should know. That's where that fruit comes from, is Mexico. It's indigenous to Mexico, and the Italians got it from the Mexicans. I think so many people, if you asked them, where's it from, most people would probably associate it with Italian food. And It's not. A lot of people don't know that most Italian pastas don't even have tomatoes in it.
Right.
But probably more for pizza as the sauce. But it's, I never knew, well, I knew that more recently, but for a while I've known it. But a lot of people don't. That tomato, give credit to Mexico for that great fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would blow their minds that noodles came from Asia. So you think Italy, you think about spaghetti and
pasta
in a red sauce. And
Yeah.
none of that's traditionally European and Italian.
I think even pizza is not as. I mean, it's from Naples, but I don't think it's like as big as we think. Like Italy's whole pizza. I don't
No,
think it
no.
is. not at all.
Not throughout Italy.
No.
No, certain regions again. Yeah. Okay, so nachos, there's no rules because I can make some pretty good, different, like you said, shredded beefs and porks, and, you have extra pulled pork or something, you making some badass nachos. But it's not something that you guys are saying are
No.
in Mexico.
That's
an
Tex-Mex.
American.
That's
thing.
Tex-Mex for sure.
I mean, it's drunk food. You'll find nachos in Mexico. Like if you go to a restaurant, like they'll have it on the menu some places, but it's not something that we're making at home for dinner.
Yeah,
or
it's
as a
bar
dish.
food.
Yeah,
I would say it would be more bar food.
Or you go
if
to a
anything.
game or
Yeah,
something.
game.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, let's make the transition to beverages. And I want to start with another one that needs to be credited to Mexico because that's where it's from. And a lot of people listening may not know this, but most Americans love it on a cold, chilly night. And that's the hot chocolate.
Oh, yes. Yeah, cacao is the same thing. The origin is Mexico, so
And not just hot chocolate, all chocolate.
all chocolate.
Oh, hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the beverage of a hot chocolate type drink comes from Mexico. And I don't think a lot of people in the States know that. I didn't for the longest
And well,
time.
not only that, it wasn't sweet.
It wasn't
so,
sweet at all.
traditionally, it's just warm cacao water,
With
basically.
Oh, really?
Typically
Yeah.
with pepper. With like
And it was water based and not like milk or anything.
Creamy.
So.
Okay, so we made it better.
Different. The American palate likes sugar. The American palate likes a lot of sugar.
So we're not having churros tonight.
oh, we're definitely having churros tonight.
Gotta have that sugar.
And I did make the sauce from chocolate abuelita, which is like the discs that they're making. Today you can find it in the grocery store to go make your hot chocolate at home.
Yeah. So hot chocolate is it right to call it hot chocolate? Is there another name we should call that?
Chocolate.
Right.
Yeah, chocolate. Chocolate caliente.
Caliente.
So let's go into some of your, minus the alcohol. Let's get into some of the traditional drinks because there are some good drinks that, I mean, my kids have a few that when we order from a particular Mexican restaurant and they have these drinks, they want them. So what are some of your favorite beverages that are from Mexico?
I think there's some. You made it hard because I love my tequila and my beer, but
We're going to get
I
there.
know. No, but definitely, the aguas frescas, which we utilize fresh fruit to make water, like flavored water. Definitely, horchata, which is not made out of fruit, use rice for that.
That's the one,
cinnamon.
yeah.
But I mean, horchata is one of my number one. Horchata and Jamaica, which is hibiscus
Jamaica.
water.
Yeah.
Jamaica and
Oh my
horchata are my
God.
favorites.
Yes.
You're talking about comfort foods earlier. When I drink Jamaica, it transports me back to Mexico.
So
Like, it's what everybody drinks over there. I feel like if we're not drinking a beer with dinner or something, we're drinking an agua fresca. Now that everybody's trying to be a little bit more health conscious and drink less sugar, I feel like maybe people are drinking a little less aguas frescas, but there's such a big pivotal part of our cuisine and our food. Like, you're going to have some agua fresca with your meal almost anywhere you go. Everywhere you go is going to have some options for you as far as aguas frescas go.
And that's real fruit, or is there added sugar to that drink?
I mean,
You're not using a simple syrup or something like that you're adding?
No, it's just mostly fruit and water.
That's not horrible sugar. Then that's better sugar.
Right,
yeah.
But it's more sugar than still water.
Agua de Jamaica has sugar in it because Jamaica is inherently very, very sour, tangy. So there's definitely sugar in that one.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
A bit.
And then the other one you mentioned,
Horchata.
That's the more common one that you'll find here in the States, right?
I think so. I mean,
Do they make it right here? When my daughter gets it from a Mexican restaurant here, do you find that it's made like it should be, or is it something
I'm sure it's
different?
not made. It's kind of time consuming and hard to make the authentic way. So I'm sure here they probably use a lot of already syrups or pre-made stuff.
Yeah.
But
they use a lot of milk in it too here, which is weird because typically you just soak the rice in water and it creates its own kind of milky.
I think
situation.
in general the horchatas I've had here are just way too sweet.
Way too sweet.
Okay.
There's just so much sugar, and it tastes fine, but I take a few sips and I'm like, okay, I don't want the rest of this. Like, it should be a water, right? It should be refreshing. Same thing with all our aguas frescas. Like, do they add sugar? Maybe if the watermelon that they use isn't sweet at all, maybe they'll use a little bit of sugar. But we want to be able to taste the fruit, right? And we want it to be, when you're eating these heavy foods or these spicy foods or these sour foods, you want something to kind of cleanse the palate. Not, in Spanish the word is like empalagar, that kind of cloying feeling in your tongue.
Okay.
You don't want that.
Okay. Is there any other drink that's kind of throughout the country?
One you said non-alcohol based, so one I'd like to throw out is atole. I love atole. They typically have it for breakfast. It's made out of corn. So champurrado is the chocolate version, and I'm addicted to it. I love it. It's
so
incredible.
what is it?
So it's literally
made out of corn.
It's literally made with masa.
Yeah. Masa is
So it's a
thickening.
thicker type.
Yeah, they use it as a thickening.
Like cornstarch almost.
Yeah. But you eat it for breakfast. It's kind of a bum because you're already eating tamales.
Yeah, usually you have tamales.
And a guajolota, we didn't talk about the guajolota, which is a tamal in a bread, in a bolillo.
Torta tamal.
So it's like...
guajolota is like a torta with a tamal inside.
They love putting things on tortas.
Just so people who don't know what tortas are, because that's something that I absolutely love, and you can find all over El Paso that you don't see as much here.
Lunches.
Tell them it's the Mexican sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
And the bread, that if you get it from the right spot, the bread is
it's going to be either like a bolillo or a telera. Yeah. Those are like the two main breads that we're using for tortas. But like you said, it's just a sandwich. You can literally put anything in there.
But the breakfast version is my favorite.
What's
with the ham and egg and
Or huevos con chorizo.
Or huevos con
I said
chorizo.
I'm a big fan of putting chilaquiles y milanesa on a torta because that's just the dirtiest thing ever.
That's like the famous one in Mexico.
That's
pretty
so
famous.
I've never heard of that.
But
Chilaquiles and milanesa.
There's a lady who will stand outside some of the clubs at 5 a.m. when they're closing.
You're at a club at 5 a.m.?
Well, that's when
Mexico
they close
never
it.
shut
They
down.
never shut down.
Never closed.
She does a torta helado. So she really puts 3 scoops of ice cream on your bread.
In a bolillo.
In a bolillo. Don't put
Really?
anything in a bolillo. It's the best thing ever.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Okay, so now we can move
I can talk about another drink that it's not necessarily alcoholic, but it's getting to the point. Tepache. That's actually when you let
I know.
the pineapple from...
Yeah.
I know.
But it's not.
I know we're kind of...
transition to alcohol.
It's
We're
a
making that
transition.
transition, so
Yeah.
that's a good...
So the
What is
tepache is
this?
actually, they use the skin of the pineapple. Once you peel in your pineapple, you use the skin, and you let it ferment. Ferment, and you empty the liquid, so you let it ferment throughout. I think it takes 5 to 7 days. And
5 to 7 days?
approximately.
So the outside of the pineapple has natural yeast on it. So when you put it in water, it's you don't need to do anything. The natural yeast are going to make it.
And the sugars are already there from the pineapple, so they just start eating the sugars.
It looks like an iced tea, but you drink it, and it's sweet.
It's good for you, too.
So
It's really good for your digestion as well.
It's like kombucha,
It's like kombucha, yeah.
It's got all those kind of probiotics to it. It does start getting a little alcoholic, but 0.5, maybe 1.
Because of the
2%
fermentation,
Because of the fermentation. But you don't drink it to get drunk. It's just like a super, and because of the fermentation, you also get a little bit of a fizziness, a little bubbliness. So it's a little carbonated, a little sweet, tangy, has strong pineapple flavor, and it just got a little bit of that kombucha kind of funkiness to it. I love the
I like it, and they have it at the farmers market. So you're doing your shopping, you have
sipping on something.
I don't know. I think most people know there's beers and there's good beers that come from Mexico. They do a good job. Do we need to spend a lot of time on that? I mean, is there something we need to say about Mexican beers that most people might not know?
No, just
Corona's not the best beer from Mexico.
They're taking over right when the
Belgium bought it too.
Yeah, right when the beer scene kind of took off in the United States, Mexico kind of followed. But people in Mexico were drinking it, but we didn't get exported at all. But with the craft beer scene in Mexico is huge.
Is it really?
Yeah, it really is.
I didn't realize that. So it doesn't get distributed over here, obviously.
No, but
I wonder if I know anybody can bring some back.
There's a few here and there, but not like if you go to little, towns. A lot of towns have their own.
Yes.
Every the smallest town,
Yes.
little pueblito, you would never imagine has their own brew. Like they all have their own brew.
Really?
Yeah.
But tend to be stronger.
Yeah.
And are they like craft breweries here who are always trying to be creative? Whether they're doing a lager, an IPA, or a stout, or whatever, they're being creative, or do they find their niche and that becomes a regional thing that when you go there, you're getting this style of beer?
I think because there's no tradition, it's super flexible.
Okay, so they change it up.
They're
like
making IPAs and stouts and porters.
Some
and
really
sours
interesting beers coming out of Mexico right now.
Is there
using Mexican ingredients,
Yes,
like
very much.
coriander. And,
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Tuna.
Yeah.
Oh, tuna's amazing. Not like the fish tuna.
No, the prickly pear.
Yeah, the prickly pear.
Is my beer seared? If it's the tuna?
Huh? It has to be rare.
So tuna is atún.
Atún.
In Spanish.
Yeah.
Tuna is prickly pear.
Yeah.
Tuna is atún.
Okay. Is there a beer in Mexico that is distributed in the States, or at least some of the states, that you go, hey, look, you need to pay attention to? I mean, we know we get
Modelo.
Yeah.
Tecate. But I cannot think of one.
I love Indio, so if I can find it here, I'll buy it.
And it is here?
Sometimes.
Okay,
Some places have it.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I think that's one of the best of the traditional Mexican ones. But no, like I said, the craft brewery scene is so large in that everybody's doing it, but it's so small that they're making it for their own little town.
Okay, makes sense.
So I can't think of a single brand that's so big that it's getting.
I just want to make sure if there was something that, we think of Negro Modelo Especial, we think of Corona, we think of Tecate, I just want to make sure is there something else that...
Well, I don't know if you've seen something that
the Pacifico is not from Mexico, right?
Yeah, Mazatlan.
Why did I think that was from Puerto Rico?
No, Pacifico.
It's from Mexico?
Mazatlan.
Okay. That's a pretty good beer.
But now I don't know if you've seen the caguamas, which are like the 32-ounce beers that just made it over
They
here
come with a brown
recently.
paper bag.
No, I mean, but they're big bottles, so it's kind of hard to put in a bag. But I think that just made it over recently, like a couple of years ago, where you can have
And
like
now
a
they're
liter of
making
beer.
caguamitas. So it's like,
Like half of it or something.
like half, yeah.
Like a quart, yeah.
I'll say Luis and I do this really, it's a vertical, 3-mile hike. And when we come back down from it, we always get a liter of micheladas. And they give you the caguama, and you're it's
Big glass
massive.
bottle.
So that is from Mexico, the micheladas?
Oh, I mean, 100%.
And
Really?
they're different in
Oh,
every
yeah.
region. It's another thing
What
that
about
they call it.
What about the margarita with the bottle sticking out? Is that from Mexico?
Definitely more border town. I think if it would be anything, it'd be more border town. But I mean, margaritas are
I think margaritas.
Texan.
They're Tex-Mex.
Not from Mexico.
Tex-Mex.
We drink palomas.
Yeah, so when you say the traditional Mexican drink is margarita, in Mexico it's paloma.
I
Paloma.
love
Okay.
palomas.
Yeah.
That's every.
I thought it was tequila.
No,
tequila's
Paloma has tequila.
Tequila's the water of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do we want to say about tequila? Well, let's start with this. Tequila and mezcal. Just a quick, the difference.
So tequila has to be made from blue Weber agave. So that's the primary difference. Mezcal can be made from any agave species, and there's dozens and hundreds of them. Now, traditionally, mezcal is made a little bit more rustically, a little bit more traditionally. So they'll use wood fires to to like ferment and boil and distill and everything. So the smoke flavor ends up penetrating the
plant.
The plant itself. Yeah, they cook the plant with wood. They roast it, and that way they're able to get the sugar content up, and then they ferment it, and then they end up distilling it. So that's really the biggest difference. You can make mezcal out of Blue Weber, and it'll be mezcal. But if you try to make tequila out of anything but Blue Weber, it's no longer tequila.
Yeah. And tequila is also from origin. I think you mentioned that. But there's a town in Jalisco, Guadalajara Jalisco, I'm sorry.
Jalisco,
it's called Tequila, which, it's from origin, just like champagne.
But it has to be from Jalisco, the state, right?
No, it can be Jalisco, I think Tabasco, and there's 2 other states that can make
okay,
tequila.
okay.
It used to only be Jalisco.
Okay.
But there's, as you discover that certain places have been making tequila for just as long, have been distilling agave for just as long in the same method and using Blue Weber, and that's why they can call it tequila.
Okay. And for those of you who haven't heard, Luis and another friend of ours, we did a very nice, in-depth, educational podcast on tequila. You need to go listen to that one. So if you're getting interested in some of the things we're saying, go check that podcast out. And still to come, the mezcal episode. We haven't done that yet. That's still on the schedule. So, okay, anything else on drinks that we want to talk about before we go into the things that most people don't like, which is the sugars and desserts?
Go for it.
I was going to say the only drinks that we maybe haven't talked about are pulque.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was going to say.
What is that?
So pulque is like beer, but made out of agave. So you ferment. It can be a little sweet, but it's
decorado, sí.
Yeah. You can. A lot of times you can drink it just as is, or they'll combine it with fruit. So you get like pulque de mango or whatever kind of fruit you want. But it's a naturally fermented, similar to kind of the tepache we were talking about, but it's made out of the agave plant.
Okay, interesting.
It's delicious. I will warn people it can get a little snotty, for lack of a better term, slimy. But like in a great way. I love it.
Yeah.
Never had snot and thought this is great.
I mean, you don't like Korean food? Korean food can be very like slippery, like Asian food.
Like okra.
Yeah, okra, very slippery, kind of slimy. Other than pulque, I think my favorite thing that I drink constantly in Mexico is the carajillo. So,
which is a cocktail originally from Spain.
Yes, it's definitely originally from Spain, but they have it in Mexico, and it's basically espresso, and then I'll say they say licor 43, but it's liquor 43. If you ask for licor 43 at Total Wine, they're gonna look at you like you just grew another head out of your shoulder. But it's liquor 43, and it was made in created in Spain, but like you drink it after any meal, every meal in Mexico. It's really great.
So I feel like we have 2 digestives in Mexico. One of them is mezcal, and the other ones are like carajillos or coffee in general.
Great coffee grown in Mexico as well.
Oh yeah, pulque. Just when it's not as processed, too. Just as a side note, it can get you sick. So if you go to the authentic pulque, it has a lot of bacteria. So just as a side note, but now they sell it in a lot of places where it's processed.
Yeah, even in Mexico City now, there's like pulquerias that are. Yeah. It used to be a very old traditional drink. It kind of fell out of favor, and now it's having a resurgence in Mexico.
Okay, very cool. Anything else before we roll into the sugars?
No, I can't think of anything.
All right, let's get to the good stuff.
That's my favorite topic.
Is there good stuff? Is there good dessert in Mexico?
Oh yeah, I think there's.
That's sarcasm.
Yeah, I think we have some of the best pastries in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Pan dulce, sí.
Yeah.
Roll of the guayaba. I would eat that every day. It's just guava and
even
perfection.
The sweet potato, los camotes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's very traditional. Camotes are, the sweet potato that they. I don't know how to explain the process, but they turn it into it's soft and sweet, and they come by through your house with a very noisy, loud car. So they're coming. It's
like a whistle almost.
It's like a super loud whistle.
Like a train whistle.
Yeah,
really
there's
strong.
like a sound that's like when you were a kid, you heard it and you knew like the camotes were coming in. So they kind of like roast them and make them super, super soft so that it extracts all the sugar. You can have them with piloncillo, Sometimes we'll put marshmallows on them. Like there's a bunch of different ways for you.
Condensed milk.
Yeah.
Condensed milk's my favorite.
And it's just like a sweet potato.
What is arroyo? What is it? Arroyo con leche?
Arroz con
Arroz con leche.
Rice pudding.
Is that that's a dessert, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, my wife makes that, and it's my kid's favorite.
Yeah, I love it too.
Rice pudding.
Okay. It's not very rich, though. I feel like you could put more condensed milk in it. A little bit more.
No, but it's supposed to be kind of like it's similar to horchata, but more solid.
Yeah,
I guess it's going to be a little bit richer, a little bit more canela, a little cinnamon, and just a little sweeter. Yeah. Maybe some raisins.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Boo!
You don't like raisins?
Well, maybe I need to. It's been 40 years since I've tried it, so maybe I should give them another shot.
I'm with you.
I
put pecans on mine.
Yeah,
that sounds good.
I'm just going to drop one more thing that just popped in my mind, just so folks who don't know. The Caesar salad also came from Mexico.
Yes,
we can move on with desserts now.
Yeah.
it's true. It's true.
One thing I think people forget is Mexico's made up a lot of microclimates. So there's the fruit there is good all year long. So, you're having fruit constantly. I think one thing that people don't know a whole lot about is mamey. And you can make basically anything out of mamey. Abuela makes amazing ice cream out of it. And she just does it in a Ziploc bag. And it's incredible. It's kind of would you say starchy?
Fibery.
Yeah, it's hard to describe mamey.
It's super creamy. It's very, very
creamy.
rich.
But you're not going to find it in the States.
They have it
at Fiesta, but it's not
or
good.
Central Market. Sometimes they have some.
Okay. So looking at a Mexican type grocery store wherever you are, and you might be able to find it.
It's an amazing fruit. I feel like it's super underrated, and I feel like most people wouldn't know about it, but it is accessible here. You can just eat it as is. It's absolutely delicious. You can make it into jellos. You can make it into like a.
Is there a skin or a peel or anything on it?
Yeah,
It's
thick
like
skin.
furry, almost like a coconut on the outside.
Oh, like a coconut.
But
It's
not like
hard?
as it's
Kiwi.
Not, it's
More
not
like a kiwi. A little thicker than
like
a kiwi.
Yeah, like kiwi. It's like fuzzy.
Okay.
That's amazing. Zapote is another fruit
Zapote.
that
I haven't found that.
I haven't seen
I
it
haven't
here.
found that here. Or Chico
But what
Zapote.
about desserts? We're talking desserts.
Well, I mean, we
of
eat
fruit.
fruit as desserts a
Oh,
lot.
boring.
Yeah.
But that's because you live here and you don't have the fruit.
The fruit in
But
Mexico
if you were
I'm
over
just
there
kidding.
and you
I eat fruit as a snack, and then I go, what's for dessert?
Well, tamales. We make sweet tamales.
Okay.
So that's
and when
another
I think
big one.
empanadas, there's some countries that I think savory empanadas, but for Mexico, I always think sweet empanadas.
That's on our
Maybe
pastries.
I'm wrong,
I think in
but-
the pastries we have the pineapple and the apple empanadas.
I like the
Yes.
quince paste
And
with
the pumpkin
queso.
that my wife loves. Mm-hmm. Calabaza.
Calabaza.
Calabaza. See,
That's a holiday.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking
The
about.
holiday. That's
Yeah.
very holiday.
Well, that's holiday?
Yeah, which we put a
With ponche.
piloncillo, which is like a brown sugar. You let it, as you said, like braise in the piloncillo.
So I do agree with you on the pastries, but I think there are different kind of pastry, different kind of bread. Because we go to, what do you call the bread shops here, the pastry shops?
Panaderia.
Panaderia.
And the
Panaderia.
bread? Panaderia.
Panaderia.
Yeah. Is that a different, or is that just what we know in America? They're different in Mexico. Because if I go to a bread shop here, we go down off 610 to the little Mexican area by the Houston cheese, the cheese
El
made,
Bolillo?
dairy cheese made.
El bolillo. I think it's one of the
Great.
best
Not
ones.
the Bol- yeah.
And
Bolillo.
airline.
El Bolillo.
The bakery.
We go in there, get our tray, load up on a bunch of sweet bread. I mean, I
I
can
think
get
it's pretty similar. I think they got
pretty
that pretty
similar.
close.
60 pieces of bread for, $11.
Yeah, you're still getting your conchas, your orejas, you're still getting the standard Mexican pan dulce. I think here. I mean, let me be real with you, it's way better in Mexico. But
That's what I want to know. Is it?
yeah,
It's close. I
It's
feel like
close, but-
they it's the right flavors, some of the right consistency, just like I said, the quality, especially in Mexico City for pastries, for bread, is crazy high because it has to be good in order for it to survive. Mm-hmm. The amount of restaurants and food shops that exist is too many.
24 million people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're not producing good stuff, you're not going to survive.
And I still not think, again, I'm very biased clearly, but I think, as you mentioned, the microclimates and, Mexico has great to grow everything. So I feel like our ingredients, everything's organic there. Everything tastes so much better. I mean, as you said, the fruit is not processed at all.
So you're
everything
telling me
is-
that the farmers markets, their version of it, are huge. That's where you go buy everything.
Oh,
Don't-
yeah.
Maybe a lot of things.
The
Tianguis,
there's
mercados.
there's even dozens of mercados. Like there'll be one for the neighborhood on the corner that they just set up
Right.
like tents and like tarps to sell their produce.
Because like here, we get it from a grocery store. In Mexico, most places, you don't get those kind of things at a grocery store. You get
I mean,
them
we
more
have
at
the
a-
grocery stores, but even in the grocery stores in Mexico, I feel like all the ingredients, everything tastes better. So it makes your bread, it makes all your meals better.
So you're saying Papa John's is right. Better ingredients.
Better
Yeah, I agree.
I think another thing to consider too about Mexico City and pastries is that it's over 7,000 feet. Mexico City is at a very high elevation, and like, yeah, you do have to change your baking, but like, I think that just makes pastries better, like flakier. Just you have to deal with that, the elevation, and
And the
I don't
opposite
know.
here,
And the opposite here, where
Sea level?
the
humidity.
humidity.
That's what I mean.
The humidity makes it super tough to get things super crispy and get the right consistency in some of the baked products.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
And I think that going back to dessert side, like I think probably one of the most famous ones is flan.
Awesome.
That's what I was going to mention.
Yeah, I think flan is amazing. I think it's super good, super traditional. But like I said, as far as desserts go, a lot nieves.
Yeah, I was gonna say
You
when you're
guys still haven't
driving.
mentioned one of my favorites that I'm starting to wonder.
Tres
maybe it's
leches.
not- Yeah.
Tres leches, yeah.
The cake.
I don't
Is
feel
it
like it's that
Mexican
big
or
in
is it
Mexico.
It's not that big, and it's more made at home.
Yeah.
Like it's not. You don't really.
Yeah,
go
we make
out.
it here at home.
Yeah.
So I've never ordered it out, but
It's not something we eat all the time. It's like we'll have it like if we're making a big dinner and the whole family's coming and we have a bunch of things like let's make a tres leches.
Or a birthday.
It just
Yeah.
like as far as cakes go, it's one of my favorite cakes. But we don't eat a lot of cake.
yeah, we don't either. But I mean, there are times that hits the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And I'm
you're-
just saying it because if somebody's never had it, there's plenty of recipes on YouTube and things. Look it up. It's a great one to make. I've never made flan. Is that hard to make?
Tricky, but not hard.
You have to follow the steps.
Yeah, it has.
It's like baking. Just make
Yeah,
sure you
yeah.
don't
Follow
jump.
the steps.
Yeah, it's
Technical.
technical, but it's not super challenging.
Okay.
You know capirotada. I was thinking a capirotada is another traditional. It's like a bread pudding. I would kind of call
I
it.
do like a bread pudding.
We
Let's
use
get
like
into that
all
season.
bolillos and we put like, yeah. That's another like holiday kind of very traditional.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what other like we mentioned nieves earlier, so like ice cream, but not cream, like made out of like water, like I guess sorbet.
It's almost
kind
like
of.
Italian ice.
No,
Is it a slushy? Are you telling me this is the 7-Eleven?
No,
it's still like ice cream.
It's
You know what I mean?
water-based.
It's water, but it's just water
Sorbet.
based.
I'm just understanding
water-based,
how
yeah.
can it be like ice cream, but there's no cream in it?
Well,
I'm thinking the consistency is going to be more just ice with flavored water following behind.
No, it's not icy.
No.
It's still.
It has a creamier texture to it,
an ice cream.
but not cream.
it has ice cream texture, but it just doesn't have cream in it.
Yeah.
It's just made with water.
Okay, now I'm curious.
Yeah, you mentioned it perfect. Like
'Cause I'm
sorbet.
figuring- I'm feeling like
Yeah,
you
come
can
on,
eat
sorbet.
a lot more of that and feel better about yourself because there's no cream in there.
Oh, there's a lot more
It's
sugar in
it's
it,
definitely less heavy.
Oh, it's got sugar?
Plenty of sugar.
Well,
so
it's the way that gelato, like, you know, how that's how they make gelato smooth. You just add a lot of sugar to it.
Okay. All right. What else on the foods and flavors of Mexico would you like to talk about before we wrap up this episode? Which I've enjoyed. Let me just say that. I think this has been learning for me. I already enjoy this cuisine so much, and I've been wanting to do an episode so people could hear more about it. And I appreciate you guys doing that. But anything else to finish this up that you have some thoughts on your cuisine other than go eat it, go try it?
Yeah, I
Go to
just say like,
Mexico.
don't go with, it has to be this way. Go be open and be willing to try it and enjoy it. It's not gonna kill you. You're not gonna die. I mean,
No.
believe me. We could. Yeah, it's
You make me
really
nervous
safe.
just by saying that.
I've had Montezuma's Revenge like 5 times, and I'm still sitting here today. I'm
I don't know what that is, but all right. What is that?
Well, it's like the equivalent of like Bangkok belly, or like when you go eat food in Moctezuma is his revenge is against Europeans or Anglos. They came over, they kind of like took over, they kind of killed Moctezuma. So he kind of cursed everybody, and he gets his revenge by
killing
Making
you.
you sick.
But burning your stomach a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And another note, I think, I don't know if you know, but Mexican cuisine is recognized as one of the top best cuisines in the world. So that thing that's
As one of the top what?
cuisines.
Oh, really?
In the world. Yeah, I think it's, I'm sure right now what it is as of today, but I think it was Italian and then Mexican or French.
Think it would be. If it wasn't, it should be. But that's because it's just, to me, just the flavors you can get out of Mexico from so many different types of dishes is, to me, impressive. You know?
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier, my last, I think, thing that I would want to say is don't go into it expecting what you know, because you only know what you know, right? And Mexican food is so varied. We didn't even touch like a lot of the different seafood stuff that you can do. Everywhere that you go in Mexico, you're going to get different cuisine. If you go to we didn't spend too much time on the Yucatan, but the Mayan influence there, cochinita pibil being like one of the primary dishes, sopa de lima, Oaxaca. Yeah, you'll have food there that if you've only ever known, even as a Mexican, if you've only lived your whole life in Mexico City, you'll go to Oaxaca and have your mind blown by how just diverse and different the food is than what you know. So especially as an American going in, don't be afraid to try different things. Don't be afraid to eat bugs, because all of them are delicious.
Hey, we've had chocolate-covered crickets.
Crickets taste
Chocolate
incredible.
Oh, yeah, that's
Crunchy like
another.
chips and salty and perfect.
Tacos de
Chapulines.
chapulín.
Yeah.
Escamoles. Yeah, it's endless.
Yeah, so go into it with an open mind, like she was saying. Don't be afraid, and be prepared to have flavors that are completely different than anything you ever had.
Well, let's finish up on your thoughts, Luis, because I don't know a lot about this, and if you guys do jump in. The wines of Mexico, they're starting to come about. So for those of us who enjoy wine and are into wines, exploring wines, when we start seeing these, because I'm seeing them more and more in the shops that I shop at, Mexican wines. Quick thoughts on the wine world of Mexico.
I think it's
Up and coming?
It's up and coming. I think the really good wines that were being made in Mexico have stayed in Mexico. And the ones that maybe you've tried or given a shot are the largest, more commercial wines. So I feel like maybe a little bit Mexican wine has at the beginning gotten a bad rep just because the accessibility of the good wines doesn't exist. And the only thing you have accessible are lower tier, kind of cheaper wines. But at the same time, we're growing. We're starting to get a little bit more serious about it. We want Mexican wine to be recognized worldwide. So I feel like the wineries are putting a little bit more effort into not just producing higher quality wine, but actually exporting it. One of the biggest retailers or producers of wine, like Montechanique, I feel like for a while was kind of resting on its laurels as far as they were one of the first ones in the market. Everybody knew them. Same thing with Casa Madero. And then it kind of like, I can't remember either Casa Madero or Montechanique, the owner handed down the ownership to his son, and his son was like, no, we need to kind of bring us back into prominence as one of the best wineries in Mexico, not just the biggest one, not just the one that exports the most. So the quality of wine is growing a lot, and we can do a lot of things with our microclimates in Ensenada and Querétaro, where most of the wine is coming from, to really produce really high quality wine. And because we're not super restricted by AVAs and AOCs and stuff, we can experiment like we're going to have later, the Nebbiolo with Cabernet Sauvignon. Maybe some people in Italy are kind of playing around with that blend, but mostly not.
I would think not, yeah.
And the white wine we're going to have is a Chenin Blanc and Chardonnay blend, which again, you don't really see those blended too much together. You'll see single varietals of either one. So we're doing some really cool, very unique things that I think are amazing now. But I'm excited to see in the long run how it evolves and develops and the wines we start getting over here.
Okay. How about you, Maya? Any last words on Mexico? Besides, you can't wait to take me and Sandra down.
Yeah, come on. We have to make it a party.
100%.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Well, thanks, guys, for doing this episode. I had a blast, learned a lot, and hope everybody listening enjoyed this as much as I did. And can't wait to do this again. This could be a topic that we can continue to dive into.
Oh, yeah, even just
Easily.
different
So much.
regions.
Yeah.
For sure.
Gracias.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.